morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where as you can see, I'm wearing my Star Wars shirt again because I'm going to see the movie again tonight. And I'm very excited, not just to see it for a second time, but because while you go to a press screening by yourself, I'm going with family tonight. So I'm just as excited to watch their reactions to the film as I am to see the film again for a second time. So actually, that's the first thing I want to ask you today before we get into the stories, the news stories for the day, and that's what has your Star Wars movie-going experience been like? What time did you have to get to the theater? How long was the line? How did everyone react when you were watching the movie? I got a great tweet from, or actually it wasn't a tweet, it was a comment in the spoiler review where someone said at a pivotal moment in the movie, someone stood up in the front row and shook their fist at the screen, and well, I don't want to give away what they yelled because it would be a spoiler, but I love stories like that, so I'm down below, please share. And also, if you went to see the movie with someone who is not usually a Star Wars fan or someone who's new to the franchise, what was their reaction? I think that would be a lot of fun, but try to avoid spoilers here, please, obviously, or put like lots of spaces and then a spoiler notification so it doesn't show up unless you click on the read more section. But I think that'll be a lot of fun to go over today. And keep sending me those Star Wars pictures of you with your ticket stub at the theater. I'm getting so many great ones. We're going to have an epic montage on Movie Math on Monday, and if you want to be a part of it, be sure to tweet me by the end of the day, Sunday, with that picture. Now, on to today's movie news stories. We have 3 non-Star Wars stories to discuss. Yes, Hollywood must keep on going, and I think they're going forward in an exciting fashion, particularly with our first story of the day. We have more posters to discuss. I'm going to put them all up here actually at once. These are the new Ghostbusters posters, and if the posters are out, I think that means that you're probably going to see the trailer very soon, which is exciting. I don't blame them for not getting in this whole mix right now. I think it's too crowded. I think they're right. I think you probably, if I had to guess, would see something in February, maybe, when, because February is now a big movie-going month, when you have Zoolander 2 hitting theaters and Deadpool. I think the Ghostbusters would be a great match with those films as a trailer. But now, Ghostbusters has had a lot of problems, as we all know, from some people who are upset that they made it an all-female team. And I would agree with that to some degree. I think that the person in me that wants everyone to get along would love to see, men and women being funny together. One of the reasons I liked Spy so much, actually. And, it would have been nice maybe to give Chris Hemsworth a poster, although he's box office poison, has now been proven. So maybe you don't want to advertise that he's in the movie. But anyway, as a female moviegoer, I do like having this group of women the way they're being depicted. And Spy is Golden Globe nominated now for Best Picture and Best Actress for Melissa McCarthy. And I think that that Spy's success critically is going to do a lot to help Ghostbusters and maybe, rescue it. Who are you going to call? The Golden Globes, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Please save us, and rescue it from a couple of feminist comments. You're seeing that a little bit emerge even with Star Wars, and it's something, it's interesting. It's something we have to get over. I can't get to talk about this too much because I don't want to give away spoilers, but let's focus on Ghostbusters. Now, I love the character posters for two reasons. One, I just think stylistically they're really cool. And also it's important to have a movie with all-female characters still seem badass. And they accomplish that with these posters, which I think is really important. So the posters seem badass, they seem science-y, which I appreciate, but they also have feminine touches. Each poster has very strong feminine touches. So you can be a badass scientist and still be girly, right? And they always say you need more women to get into science, so maybe this will help. Like, for instance, I was watching The Big Bang Theory last night, and they talked about Star Wars, and all the female characters on the show didn't like Star Wars or had no interest in it, and I found that kind of annoying. I know that the audience so far for Star Wars is 71% male and 56% over the age of 25, but there are still some women going, and I think that it doesn't help to, reinforce the stereotype that women don't get comics or get Star Wars. I have a ton of pictures of women with ticket stubs to prove the opposite. All right, so anyway, with the posters here, you've got Leslie Jones here as Patty, as you can see from her necklace. So that's like the feminine touch, but she's doing a great job here. I really love her poster a lot. Then Melissa McCarthy, I have to say, I feel that I think you could make some inappropriate jokes off of this. I would have been like, I would have picked a different kind of way to go with this. I'm curious if that occurred to anyone else when they looked at this poster, but she looks like she means business, and I like that, she's got the lipstick and she's got the manicure, but still looks really cool. And you can see her character's name is Yates. You can't see every character's names. Those are the only two, actually. But the gloves also, the fingerless gloves, look super awesome, right? All right, so next, I love Kate McKinnon here. I think she looks great. I'm a big Kate McKinnon fan. I feel like, for a while, Will Ferrell was the superstar of SNL. Then it was Bill Hader. I think Taron Killam has been like a superstar for them a little bit. But I think that, Kate McKinnon has emerged as the new Kristen Wiig of SNL. It's rare for SNL to have a strong female performer. I don't know what it is with their casting office that they can't get more talented female comedians, but they've been doing pretty good. Amy Poehler, Tina Fey, but Poehler and Fey have not done so well transitioning to movies, as we're seeing with Sisters, which is going to get eclipsed at the box office. You can see both, but it doesn't look like anyone is seeing both. That was their ad campaign to try and get people to see Sisters this weekend. But I think that McKinnon could hopefully go the way of Kristen Wiig and transition to film. Although Wiig herself hasn't done so great, but I think that's mostly Wiig's fault for going and making a lot of weird indie films, which is great if that's what she wants to do, but she kind of decided on her own she didn't want to be a big superstar like Melissa McCarthy. But that's fine. Melissa McCarthy's doing a fantastic job. But I think that with Kate McKinnon here, I love the goggles. I personally am a big fan of goggles. When I used to do comedy sketches, I owned a pair of goggles. I lost them to the mold in my apartment a few years ago, as longtime BTT viewers know. Sad times. But anyway, I think her goggles look fantastic. But then I love with her nuclear sign, there's a heart on it. I think that's so great. I love it. I see a real merchandising, situation here with potentially stickers and stuff. So that's really cool. So that's great. And then finally, true to form, I think Kristen Wiig has the worst posters, the weakest poster. She gets the Ghostbusters logo. That's cool. Maybe that's how they sold it to her. They were like, you get the Ghostbusters logo. But I'm having a hard time telling that it is Kristen Wiig. It doesn't quite look like her. Her bangs seem to be a big part of her character choice from the on-set photos that we've seen in the official photo that they released, yet you don't see them here. And she just looks heavily photoshopped in the face area. I'm like, is that Kristen Wiig? I don't think it is. So I'm glad she got the Ghostbusters sign, and she also seems to have a manicure as well. But we'll see. Oh, by the way, on a side note, if you see Joy, they have an interesting comment about hands and selling things and how people's eyes are drawn to people's hands. I thought that was very interesting. I'd never thought of that before. So overall, I love the posters. I think they're very cool. I think they're feminine, yet I think they're still also very action-packed, and that's exciting. I think that's great. I think it's a great message. The question is, will that be a message that everyone wants to hear? I want to hear it. I can't wait, but I'm curious to what you think down below. But overall, love the posters. Love Paul Feig. I think he's incredibly talented. I think his spy movie is one of the best movies of the year. You're going to see it on my top 10 list for sure, towards the top. And I'm curious to know I'm curious to see if he can pull off Ghostbusters. So far, it looks like he's doing a really good job. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day, talking about women in movies, is that they've just cast the female lead for Alien Covenant. Which was originally called Alien Paradise Lost. And before that was Prometheus 2. But anyway, now it's Alien Covenant. Promise, Ridley Scott? And he's like, no, I don't promise. But anyway, he really wanted Rebecca Ferguson for this lead role, who did a wonderful job, obviously, this summer in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, a star-making turn. But was it? Because I don't see her getting a lot of work off of it. She's in The Girl on the Train, I believe, and now Mission Impossible 6. But I thought she would have done a little better off after Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. I thought she would have gotten something a little better. I said she'd be a great Catwoman, as some of you had also suggested. Maybe Captain Marvel. Made a whole video about it. But yet, nothing has come of it, really. But she did go back to Mission Impossible 6, which is why I believe she couldn't be in Alien Covenant. So, the role instead went to Katherine Waterston, which is fascinating, because Katherine Waterston, as we all know, is also in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. And she's come out of nowhere. This is Sam Waterston's daughter from Law and Order. And she was in Inherent Vice and also Steve Jobs. That's really the only stuff that she's done to date. No one's like a big Katherine Waterston fan out there. It's a little bit like the Noomi Rapace casting. And Rapace also apparently might show up in this movie as well. I think it's a bit of a mistake, but then again, everyone's going to see this movie obviously for Michael Fassbender's David, his robot. I mean, one of the greatest characters ever created. So good that even the horrible movie Prometheus couldn't bring that character down. But anyway, what made me really interested about this, with Katherine Waterston being cast, is that it reminds me of what happened in Avengers Age of Ultron, when Saoirse Ronan was actually Joss Whedon's first choice to play the Scarlet Witch. But she said no, just like Rebecca Ferguson said no to Alien Covenant. So I believe, this isn't confirmed, this is my theory, by the way, that Aaron Taylor Johnson, who was already cast as Quicksilver, had been working with Elizabeth Olsen in Godzilla for Gareth Edwards. They played a couple in that movie. So I believe when Joss Whedon was like, crap, my first choice said no, what am I going to do? I think Aaron Taylor Johnson said, I'm working with Elizabeth Olsen. She's such a nice person. I think you'd love having her on set. I recommend her. I'd love to do something nice for her, and I'd love to work with her again. And so Joss was like, okay. And I think, thank goodness he did, because I think Elizabeth Olsen is a fantastic Scarlet Witch. And to be fair to Katherine Waterston, I think she's very good. I mean, even though I hated her in I actually disliked her both in Inherent Vice and Steve Jobs, I think she looks pretty good in Fantastic Beasts. So maybe she's turning a corner. But anyway, my feeling is that maybe Michael Fassbender said, oh, hey, you're looking for someone, Ridley? What about Katherine Waterston? I enjoyed working with her quite a bit. So I guess that to Katherine Waterston's credit, she must be likable if people are recommending her. Or maybe they wanted her off of Fantastic Beasts. Maybe it's that simple. But I think it's interesting that with these really big roles and important things in Hollywood, that they're just like friend recommendations. Like, for instance, I was watching the 60 Minutes special from over the weekend last night, and they were talking about The Force Awakens, and Steven Spielberg said, yeah, I got J.J. Abrams the job because I turned to Kathleen Kennedy, my former assistant turned producer turned head of Lucasfilm, and I said, hey, Kathy, why don't you hire JJ? He's the only guy I can see doing this. Now, I feel hiring JJ actually was a mistake after having seen the movie. I think I would have gone with someone a little bit more of a risk taker who had more of a unique voice, which is why I'm very excited to see Rian Johnson take over the franchise for Episode 8. But JJ Abrams got the job from friends, as a recommendation. I guess they're calling him the sequel king, apparently, but I'd be like, have you seen all the sequels that he's made? I mean, I think he did a great job with the first Star Trek that he rebooted, but I thought Star Trek Into Darkness was incredibly weak, and I also wasn't a big fan of his Mission Impossible. I mean, he didn't kill that franchise, but I mean, when you look at that side by side with what Christopher McQuarrie has done with the franchise, it's like laughable. And so hopefully we'll feel that way when we compare Episode 7 to Episode 8. I'm putting a lot of pressure on you, Rian Johnson. But anyway, I'm curious to what you think about Hollywood doing business this way. When hundreds of millions of dollars are at stake, that it's done by favors. I guess that is always business to some degree in every industry. Like, you'll often see someone get hired to run a company because he's got friends, even though he or she is the right person for the job, the deal was made on a golf course, right? But I think with movies, I'm just surprised. I don't know. I think that it's unfortunate, but I guess a good lesson here is make a lot of friends and have people recommend you for stuff. All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story of the day, someone tweeted me about this yesterday. I'm sorry, I didn't look up the tweet, so I can't give the person credit. I apologize. I believe it was Lynn, actually. But anyway, Disney and other theme parks in the United States, and Universal and also SeaWorld in Orlando, have begun using metal detectors and wands to scan guests. And they've gone even further at Disney World, where they have new rules that you cannot wear any costumes in the park if you're over the age of 14, and there are no toy weapons, particularly toy guns. And that's something they just implemented starting this week. Actually, yesterday, I believe, the 17th, it made a lot of headlines. But for the most part, people said, good, I'm glad that you've done this. I think it's important. And also, I saw another story this morning about how there's been some suspicious activity at movie theaters, two movie theaters, one in Arizona, one in Southern California, about, suspicious people asking questions about the movie theaters for the weekend, and also, very alarming news story, and also taking cell phone video of the emergency exits, and just, being very oddly, overtly obvious about any plans they might have. So maybe it's just a scare tactic. Maybe people are just like, I'm just going to try and scare people from going out. But, as a result, you should feel good that movie theaters have hired additional security for the weekend. Like, sometimes they've tripled their security. And I think that's just people's overall reaction. I think it's kind of like, hey, I wish we didn't have to do this, but if you think that we need to do it, I'd rather you do it. Like, for instance, when I was in Pittsburgh, I think like a year ago, Kennywood, everyone had to go through a metal detector. And I was like, hey, Kennywood, if you think you need to put everyone through a metal detector, please do. I'll happily walk through your metal detector. And also, I want to clarify that at Disney World, they just have like one metal detector at each park, and they do, well, they pick who goes through the metal detector. So if you're super weird, they're going to make you go through the metal detector, or, super suspicious. But you know what? I don't think anyone should be insulted about it. It's just at the end of the day, you don't want to freak out when you're at the movie theater or you're at a theme park. But I'm curious to how you guys feel about it. I predicted this a long time ago that this would eventually happen, that you would have metal detectors potentially I think it might even go forward to malls. That would be very difficult. And movie theaters. And we talked about, potentially having metal detectors at movie theaters at some point in time. But now, for instance, no costumes. Like, there's a strict no mask policy at all the movie theaters. And they might end up banning costumes as well. But I'm curious, just what do you think of it? What would you do if you, how do you feel about it as a fan, but also how do you feel about it if you were in charge of people's safety at any of these establishments? What would you do, and how do you feel about it? All right, so that's the third story of the day. Now, for the viewer question, this comes from Kylie Coates on Twitter, and Kylie had a great question. And Kylie said, hey Grace, question, did 2015 hold up as a record-breaking year and one of the most magical years for motion pictures? Thanks. Great question, Kylie. I saw that this morning and I was like, Kylie, you're right. We used to talk about how 2015 was going to be the most amazing year ever for movies. Now we're saying that's going to be 2016. But I think, I'm going to make my year-of-end videos coming up, so we'll be discussing those shortly. But I thought that, in terms of how the year performed, I think that overall, box office wise, it was pretty stellar. I mean, we haven't even had Star Wars yet. It's just opening today. And 4 movies have joined the $1 billion club already. That's amazing. That's just shocking. And so that's why, as some people are saying today, also some of you, that's why the $2 billion club is going to become the new hot place to be. So far, it's very limited. It's much more limited in its membership than the $1 billion club at this point. And also 3 of those 4 movies that joined the $1 billion club are from Universal. So I really feel that this is the year of Universal. Universal should be very proud of its performance. I don't know if they're going to be able to do a repeat next year, but this was certainly one for the record books, and very, very impressive, especially because you would never think it would be Universal. If someone would be like, what movie studio is going to break a bunch of records and have a bunch of movies join the $1 billion club? You'd be like Disney, or you'd be like Warner Brothers, or even Fox, but nope, it's Universal. So that just really shows the franchise building that they're doing over there and how impressive it is. But I think this is really a year where sure bets didn't pay off. Avengers, a little disappointing. I liked Furious 7, but a lot of people felt it only did well because of the tragedy of Paul Walker. Minions, I liked it, but some people prefer Inside Out. But anyway, so I actually liked a lot of the movies that did very well this year. And obviously people must have, or they wouldn't have done so well. But I think that the real highlight of 2015 is that it was a year of wonderful surprises and very quirky, unique, original films doing well. For instance, this is the year that gave us Mad Max Fury Road, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, The Martian, Kingsman: The Secret Service, Spy, Straight Outta Compton, Creed. That's a really great year for movies. And it's so nice to not rattle off a bunch of sequels, but to really, show some unique filmmaking is still alive and well, and also a lot of stereotypes being broken there, which I think is very, very impressive. So Kylie, I think that this isn't quite the magical year that we'd expected. I think box office wise it's excellent, and I think also it's a great year for unique pictures. And I think that I'm very excited to the year ain't over yet, and I think that the awards season is going to tell potentially a really great wrap-up where some of these movies I just mentioned actually get recognized because the usual stereotypical winners have been so underperforming this year. So it's a very interesting, I wouldn't say, so it's not a magical year, it's an interesting year, or a year of justice, perhaps. All right, thank you for your question, Kylie. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Be sure to write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and your thoughts on 2015, both box office-wise and just critically. And then, of course, don't forget to vote in Beyond the Trailers annual poll of your top 10 movies of the year. The link is in the video description, and you have until January 2nd to vote. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.